I left the church via what is called a fade. I
Mhm.
moved. I moved 3 times, I think, in about a year or something, so that my records got lost. So they didn't know. No one knew which congregation I was supposed to be in, and I lied a lot. I told
Mhm.
my parents that I was going to this congregation. I lied a lot, and I cut off every friend that I still had left in the truth before they could cut me off.
Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. I'm your host, Teresa. So, my guest today believes that we all have powers, that everyone has something unique that they can offer the world. This uniqueness is a mix of how you were raised, your experiences along the way, and how you've integrated them. Her name is Jessica Evans, and she is here to share her story of leaving a closed religious society that refers to itself as the truth. The church gave her a rule book for life that separated members of the truth from the rest of society. Remaining inside the community was good. Being outside the community, in Satan's world, was bad. The truth keeps closed records of all its members who are in good standing. I have invited Jessica here today to share the superpowers that she has unfolded, how it can support you in finding yours too, and her newly released book, Fade to Light, about her journey. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Teresa. It's so good to be here. I'm glad we've been able to connect.
Without a doubt. Yeah, because we've known each other for a while.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
couple of years doing the book duelist program.
Mhm.
And so here you are with just getting ready to birth a book and birth a beautiful new baby. So congratulations on the new birth this year.
Thank you. A 2-year gestational period for the book and your traditional gestational period for the baby.
And that's the thing about books. You never know how long it's going to take, right?
Yeah,
So
it's true.
this book is your memoir, Fade to
Yes,
Light. So I
yes.
would love for you to share a bit about the story, your backstory, and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said in the intro as well, I was raised in a closed religious community, the East Coast of Canada. And though the book, I'd say like maybe the first quarter, I do go into some specifics about what it was like to be raised in that community, but it's not an expose. I'm I'm at peace with my story, and I feel like if I tried to write a memoir 10 years ago, perhaps there would have been more resistance or anger or resentment about how I was raised. Whereas now I find I'm at peace with it. Like you said, the superpowers that we get, I believe that I was meant to have this life, and I have, as a result of leaving, that it is by many standards, it is a cult. I don't need to attach to that. I find that that can be a loaded term for some people, and they think of Waco, Texas, and things like that. Whereas it's a closed society, and in leaving it, I lost my origin family. So that's we are estranged. We are formally, officially estranged, if you will. And in that, I was able to find peace of not needing to pretend to be good and not needing to have the guilt of being bad and things like that, and just came into such a state of calm and contentment, radical self-acceptance of my story, discarding and accepting any shame that I had about that story, because it's can be messy, or people say, oh, I'm so sorry you don't talk to your parents, and I think, oh, I don't want you to be sorry. Ditching victimhood, that took years and years. So I'm in my early 40s now. I left in my early 20s. So we're talking 2 decades of having been in and out of a victim mentality of this happened to me. And now feel very empowered in self-partnership and self-love.
Wow. And so, yeah, it's interesting how many cults there are in different places around the country and the world that a lot of people may not understand or know about.
Hmm.
And so I always find it's intriguing the journey that people take through that and then where you're at now, that fade to light. So I'm assuming there's something about that, the title, correct?
Yes, yes, that's the book. See, fade to light.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So I left the church via what is called a fade. So there's different ways to leave, and A few of them are more abrupt and more official, if you will. You write a letter and you burn the bridges, or you get kicked out. And I almost got kicked out a number of times. And the book starts with a very, very personal story of the last time I almost got kicked out. And so what I decided to do instead was the fade. I
Mhm.
moved. I moved 3 times, I think, in about a year or something, so that my records got lost. So they didn't know. No one knew which congregation I was supposed to be in. And I lied a lot. I told my parents that I was going to this congregation. I lied a lot, and I cut off every friend that I still had left in the truth before they could cut me off.
Mhm.
And that was a really tough chapter that I don't think I gave enough credit to until I wrote this book, until I
Mhm.
really looked at how that felt and how that resonated within me with that conditioning and that experience for years and years of having, I don't have any friends in my life from before I was 20.
Mm. And I think it's interesting the parallels of that. You're birthing this book about your the struggles, what you came through, and coming into the light, and then you're also birthing a new baby. So you're
Yeah.
bringing new life into. So tell me a little bit about that and how that's really. I mean, I've got chills. I say it, but those parallels is just uncanny, Jessica.
Oh, it's almost as someone who I do try to have a lot of trust in the divine and in the process and what have you. This is still just a little bit too what um my I end the book like, I think the last this isn't going to be a spoiler for anyone, but I do say, uh falling in love with myself has been quite the adventure, a last resort to find mental health. Who would have thought that my healthiest relationship would have only one person in it? And that's how
Mhm.
the book ended. And I
Mhm.
finished writing it over a year ago. And in that time I got married. Like there's a lot in the book about that pressure to be married, to be a wife, to be like a good Christian wife, and to support my husband and
Mhm.
everything like that. And I resisted that as being given to me as my sole identity. And I chased sports and I chased a career and I excelled in all sorts of excuse me, all sorts of things. Um, so then to get married after writing this book, where it talks about deep self partnership and self acceptance, being
Mhm.
in this relationship with self, and then for us to make a baby in a very just natural, traditional, easeful way. I'm very grateful because I told my partner, I said, I've felt the calling to be a mom so often, but I needed to not focus on it because I was in a series of not healthy relationships. And I'm
Mhm.
very glad that I didn't breed with any of those people.
Did you say breed?
Breed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too how for all of our journeys, whenever we go through all of life, and there seems like we have to go through struggles, and then things doors close, windows open, things shift, and so
Mhm.
it just seems to me like a beautiful display of how you've clearly done some work on yourself, and then now here comes this new life you're bringing through to, enjoy the rest of your life with a new
Yeah.
husband, and then a new baby, and I mean that's amazing.
It's I'm incredibly grateful, and it's still surreal. It's
I
still
bet.
very, very surreal, to be pregnant for my first time
Mhm,
as well,
mhm,
and I'm at 33 weeks right now.
mhm,
So they could come out today, and with a bit of medical support, they could survive, you know?
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah, I had a
so
daughter came 5 weeks early, so yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, exactly.
mhm,
Exactly. So it's a possibility, and it's just, yeah, check back with me because it's still so surreal to be able to have written this book, to become a published author, and then to become a parent. It's
mhm.
just, oof. It's
Here's
almost,
the next part, right, Jesse? Like, okay, next chapter.
yep. Yeah, I'm ready.
So, for the listeners out there that might be struggling with say they're involved in a, I hate to say a cult. I mean, who knows, right? Or a
Mhm.
situation where they feel, like they can't get out of. What are some advice and some suggestions you would make to people that might be struggling with relationships, religion, or whatever that they need to kind of, release themselves from, like you have?
Yeah. I feel it's so important to question, just to
Hmm.
question the truths that we've been given, to be question the beliefs that we've been given, because that's where things started with me from a young age. Is and I also want to say, like, for some people, for where they are in their life, for where they are for this soul journey, if you believe in that sort of thing of specific journeys and lessons for each time we come through as a soul, being in a closed community might be something that they need.
Hmm.
Maybe because people do seek out cults, whereas for me, it was given to me. I was born into it, and I was told that I was superior to everybody else.
Hmm.
God loved us the best. We were
Hmm.
saved. And
Hmm.
that never felt right to me, even as a little one. Just really like, that friend at school is so nice, and you're telling me they're gonna die in Armageddon. Like, it felt heavy and it didn't feel right. So I
Hmm.
feel it's so important to listen to our intuition, and
Hmm.
to know, like, we know if the relationship isn't working. You can, a person can hear it in their voice when they tell their friends, hey, my partner said this and this, that's not right, when they're seeking approval to be able to free themselves.
Hmm.
And I just, there's a practice that I have in the book as well that I call my deep listen, which is, it's borrowed heavily from yoga nidra, essentially, yogic sleep, if you will,
Hmm.
of just being able to go into a reclined meditation and just listen. And what's coming up after there's the is the laundry dry, what am I going to wear tomorrow, what's for dinner, like, after there's all that stuff, to bubble down, and then it's, I don't need to know who I'm listening to. Is it my soul? Is it my higher self? Is it my dead grandmother watching over me? Is it an innate knowing? To listen and to know, we know what's right for us. We
Hmm.
know the moves we need to make, and I am not in any way discounting the courage that it takes to make those moves. But when you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah, the word that came up as you're talking was strength.
Mm,
I mean, you've been obviously a very strong soul, and you came in with this, coming into that situation and then to move out is, gosh, that takes strength, but you're clearly on a mission, and that's exactly what you did. And I know that's what the listeners, if they're in certain situations, there are a lot of people that go, wow, that's strength. It's just like it comes in. I agree too, like through spirit, through our intuition, our guts, and
yeah,
our spiritual helpers to help us move into what's the next thing we need to really accomplish while we're here.
yeah, yeah. And wait until you're ready. Because courage, I believe that courage is grown.
Hmm. Hmm. Without a doubt. And
Yeah.
but also I do believe too that some of us bring it in with us.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of our essence, of our soul essence, because I look at some people that I was raised with, and I came in a stronger soul, which I'm sure you probably, if you look at the people that you were around and the things they were going through, like there's just the souls come in with the soul essence and what they brought in from before. And a lot of us are just here on a journey. We're here on a mission, and
Yeah.
almost, I hate to say hell bent fire, but I'm going to do what I've come to do, and things are going to move out of the way, like you did with your situation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I look at my story, and to be honest, and I say this in the book, whenever I was first drifting and fading, part of it was because I was 19, I was legal drinking age.
Hmm.
I liked going to clubs. It wasn't this big philosophical reckoning that I had as a early 20-year-old. It was pretty basic. I wanted to have some fun, and I wanted to be away from those restrictions that have been placed on me. But then what it grew into has become far more philosophical, and just the belief of, yeah, question. Just take the time to question everything, listen to what's right, what feels right,
Hmm.
and then just dabble in when the courage will come up to be able to make those moves.
Absolutely. And I looked at your website and I love this quote you have on there. It's the goal is to love yourself like your life depends on it. When I saw that, Jess, I was like, woo, that is big. The goal is
Yeah.
to love yourself like your life depends on it. Share some good mojo about that one, Jess.
Well, that comes from, and that's an innate belief of mine, and that is my encouragement to everybody, is that we deserve love. So that's one
Mhm,
of the biggest takeaways that I've had from writing this book and from mulling over and reviewing and like tearing apart and putting back together the pieces of my experience is I was raised with conditional love.
mhm,
God loved us if I do believe that my parents do love me. Absolutely. I
mhm,
do believe that, and I love them. However, we couldn't have a relationship unless. So there's all of these if this and unless that, and even showing up at church with the wrong hem length of my skirt or too
mhm,
tight of a whatever.
mhm,
Now things are conditional again. Okay, then the really good people aren't going to talk to me. So that was something that was woven into me from a young age. And I have had some really really low points.
mhm,
And in the book I do talk about one of my absolute lowest points where I really seriously considered, do I want to continue in this life?
mhm,
Do I want to? I
mhm,
don't know if I can. I
mhm,
just don't know if I can. And that's where I say in that quote that you made of love yourself like your life depends on it. Because my life did depend on it that day. And I
mhm,
did decide, it's a line I read in a book of, what if I fell in love with myself? And
mhm,
that concept just spun for me of what self-love means, because we see there's the memes like the self-love bubble bath and the self-love scented candle, and I'm not discounting those things, like those are important gestures, but what is it like to be in love with ourselves,
mhm.
right?
Like for
You've been in
real.
love, I've been in love. There's this encouragement whenever I
Mhm,
even liked somebody, which I'm currently not dating because I'm married, but even if I was interested in somebody, I would want the best for them and they
mhm,
could do no wrong. And I would encourage them and I would have these dates with people and they would say, "Oh, I can't this or I can't that." And I'd be like, "No, you're limiting yourself. You're amazing. Don't limit yourself." And then whenever it came to my relationship with Jessica, with myself, I was all sorts of like vile things that you would not stand up for from a friend.
mhm,
If your friend was telling you just to quit and to give up and you're not good enough, you wouldn't stay in that like friendship,
mhm,
not for long, I'd hope.
mhm,
So to love ourselves as if our life depends on it, because it can. And for some of us, it really does. And that's
mhm.
been the most healing practice for me out of anything that I've tried, is self partnership and to be in love with myself.
And I find too that once we've gone down that road of loving ourselves and really accepting who we are and all of our faults and all of our the good things we have about ourselves, that's when we attract the partners that mirror back to us how much we do love ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just what came in whenever you're like talking about how you just got married and then the baby just kind of came in, and
Yeah.
it's like I mean, it just all happens at the right timing, but it's because it started with Jessica loving Jessica.
Yeah. 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 I don't think I needed to prove any points or have any sort of a scorecard or anything, at the end, at the quote unquote end of the game of how much do I love myself. I love myself so much that I'm getting these external markers
Mhm,
of a husband and a family. However, that they came in whenever I was ready, when I was whole and complete. And no parent is perfect. I'm not in any way trying to put that on myself.
mhm,
But I know in my absolute heart and soul that I can be such a better parent to this little person who's coming in to this. I mean, I've seen them as an adolescent, as a grown adult, like the that I get to shepherd in their soul and take care of them. I know I can do it now, whereas 10 years ago, I can't imagine what sort of unhealed, wounded type of mom that I probably would have been.
Mhm. You would have been perfect at that time, but
Exactly. For that
understanding where
person.
you're at.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the right soul would have came in to experience exactly what you were
Yeah.
bringing forth. But this soul that chose to come in now and where you're at, I mean, it'll be so interesting to see the unfoldment of and the beautiful, relationship that you're going to develop with this soul at where you're at. Because I think about that too, like where I'm now. Yeah, I mean, I was a crazy mom. I call myself, I was a hot, energetic mess mom for years. But Jess, it's just where I was at. I mean,
Mhm.
I had nothing to base anything on
Yeah.
spiritually or wisdom wise. And I see now why when people are older and they have children or grandchildren or whatever it is, I mean, I can see why it's such a different dynamic because I am in such a space of like, yeah, I'm just chill now versus before I was like
Right.
freaking the hell out about everything.
Yeah.
So what a blessing, Jessica, to have this child in your 40s. I mean, really.
Yeah. 'Cause I do feel chill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Very
great.
chill and comfortable with myself and all the good things in that age brings, in addition to this deep work that I went through for
Mhm.
it was probably about 16 or 18 months of the initial manuscript and then all of the revisions and edits and things like that.
Mhm. And I recall too, you had shared a lot on Instagram when you were going through it and how the land and where you were living at, and you really shared a lot of the process of nature and what you were going through. And it was an absolutely beautiful exposure of what you were experiencing during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to my intention is to share more about that and just
Mhm.
the specifics of how I worked with the land here to write the book. Like the
Mhm.
first line of the book came in while I was in the backyard trimming weeds, and I called it my field
Love
of
it.
dreams. I bought
Mhm.
this property, um, and someone said like that whole backyard, like it's all just been left to go to hell by the previous owners, and those are just these huge weeds. And I thought, I'm gonna cut them all, and I'm gonna cut them all by hand. So I went out starting in the first where I live on the west coast of Canada. It's a pretty mild climate, so I went out the first sunny day in January and
Mhm.
started cutting those weeds and symbolized that each of them was a limiting belief
Mm.
of fear of writing the book, fear of sharing my story, fear of success.
Mhm.
That was an interesting one of what if the book is good and what if it does well? Like that was kind of keeping my hands tied. And I went out and I would look at this weed, and I'm saying like each one would be like the diameter of at least like of a quarter.
Mhm.
So I
Big
would look
weeds.
at it and say, you symbolize this limiting belief, and mindfully cut it. And I could have mowed the whole thing and been done in a weekend. But the
Right.
opportunity there to
Yeah.
work with the earth, to work with grounding principles, with the material world, and then to be able to bring this book into the material world.
Mm.
Honestly, once I was done, there was a little part of me that's like, oh, all the weeds are gone.
Literally inside and outside, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm a work in progress.
As we all are. And
Yeah.
I believe until our last breath, it's like it's just an onion unfoldment,
Yeah.
really taking off all of the different layers one by one because
Yep.
we're made up of so many layers. But what a beautiful process to have the earth to really to have that gift for you, Jessica. I mean, how beautiful.
It's again, like I said, it's surreal. I was cutting a weed and the first line of the book came in and I stopped and I kind of looked around all by myself, and we were in lockdowns and everything. So I've been by myself and in isolation for a while as well. And I kind of looked around at nothing and went, is that my first line? Is that really that's my first line? It's like, oh my goodness. Because I said I start the book with a very personal
Mhm.
story about the last time I almost got kicked out of the church
Yeah.
in which I was raised. So I came in and I wrote 50,000 words in the next 3 or 4 weeks. It
Wow.
just floodgates.
Yes. So, through this book, what is a big message that you would like people, the readers of this book? And are you doing an Audible?
Yes, yeah, I've recorded all of the audiobook chapters, and they're just being edited by the sound engineer right now. So that'll be
Yeah.
out. The book will be out March 4th, and the audiobook I think maybe a little later in March. Just
Mhm.
takes a bit more time of listening. It's like 20 hours or something like that.
Wow. So, what is the key message that you would like to leave this podcast with for the listeners about the book and about the process of reading your book and going through it?
Ooh, that's a whole bunch of questions. Of course, dare to love yourself.
Mhm.
It's not something that we are often taught to do or that we are deserving of. Especially for my generation, I do have hope for the younger generations as well. But for those of us in my generation, it's just dare yourself, dare to dream, and start with that self partnership.
Mhm.
Um, and the book itself, Fade to Light, I've had a couple friends that have previewed it for me and just went, "Whoa!" They had to put it down. And one said, "I think it's because I know you well that I was reading these experiences that happened to you." It's a very raw, honest read, especially at the beginning. I'm I'm not pulling any punches. I'm being very honest with how I was raised, and I'm
Mhm.
taking accountability as well. That's the thing. Is the book has a happy ending.
Mhm.
You've heard about it from us here.
Yes.
It ends on a positive note. There's so many lessons that are learned that I'm able to share along the way.
Mhm.
And please, I'm going to, whenever the book's released in a couple weeks, is to have a ceremony to let it go, because it's not my book anymore once it's out there.
Mhm.
It becomes whatever it is for each person.
Mhm.
So if it seems like something that's appealing to you, please, I would love for it to be part of your journey, your experience as well. But no matter what, tell yourself I love you. See how that feels. Start there and
Mhm.
dare to dream, dare to love yourself.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming on today,
Thank
sharing your
you.
beautiful book, Fade to Light. And I will have obviously all the links. There it is for those watching the video and the audio. What is on the cover of it? Because I can't really see from my here. It's a beautiful heart and looks like is it you
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
an
so
angel?
it's an illustration. So we've got kind of the lungs with the roots and the fading and the halo of the very kind of ethereal
Beautiful.
personage type of image. Yeah, it's pretty
Beautiful,
powerful.
beautiful. Well, I wish it much success. I wish your new baby many blessings for the
Thank
journey
you.
it's coming
Yep,
into. What
I can hear
so
you.
excited for you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much, Jess, for coming on today.
I really appreciate it, Teresa. Thank you.
Wherever you're at in the world, thank you again for listening to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. A big thanks for Jessica for coming on today, sharing with us her story, her new book, Fade to Light, and accessing some insights about loving yourself deeper, accessing that strength and that gut intuition whenever you need it throughout your life. If you've not subscribed to this podcast, please make sure you hit subscribe. Also, hit like. Also, please feel free to leave a comment on how you enjoyed this episode. And also, please feel free to share with your friends and family. If you'd like to connect with me, please you can go to the link in the show notes for Pod Inbox, where you can leave a message for me or support this podcast. So until next week, please make sure that you remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.